Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! In the depths of an agonizing migraine, the first sensation he registered was an incessant throbbing, akin to the relentless march of an army within his skull. With great effort, he forced his eyes open, a microcosm of pain exploding behind his eyelids. The invading sunlight, piercing through the thin fabric of the curtains, felt akin to 1,000 needles pricking his retinas. His vision swam, the world a blurry haze of shapes and colors that refused to coalesce.
"Am I still among the living?"
he managed. The hoarse, alien sound of his own voice startled him. He squinted, attempting to bring the room into focus. The sickly sweet hues of bubblegum pink and baby blue adorned the walls, and the dainty floral drapes contrasted with the harshness of his hangover. Off. His chest felt heavy, constricted. Glancing down, his eyes widened in shock. 2 unmistakably feminine mounds protruded from his chest, barely contained by a silky camisole. "What the?" He scrambled out of bed, nearly tripping over unfamiliar long legs as he rushed to the full-length mirror on the closet door. The reflection staring back at him was decidedly not his own. Instead, a tall, slender woman with flowing chestnut hair and striking green eyes gazed back in equal bewilderment.
No. No, no, no,
he whispered, reaching up to touch his face. Her face. "This can't be happening." Fragments of the previous night began to surface through the alcohol-induced haze. The bar, the shots, the dare, and the mysterious woman with the mischievous smile. What was her name? Vanessa. That's right. She'd challenged him to some sort of magical swap, insisting it would teach him a lesson. He'd laughed it off, of course. Magic wasn't real. Except, here he was, inhabiting Vanessa's body while his own was God knows where. "Shit," he groaned, running his hands through silky hair. "What have I gotten myself into?" A phone buzzed on the nightstand, startling him. He picked it up gingerly, seeing a message from someone named Kate flash across the screen. "Van, where are you? We open in 30 minutes. Open? Open what? Sean, or rather Vanessa, scrolled through the phone's recent messages and calendar, piecing together that she worked at a boutique downtown, and apparently she was already running late. "Crap," he muttered, fumbling through unfamiliar drawers and closets. How was he supposed to dress like Vanessa? Everything looked impossibly tiny and complicated. After several failed attempts, he settled on a flowing blue blouse and slim-fitting black trousers. Makeup was a lost cause. He'd have to hope no one noticed. Grabbing the keys he found on the dresser, he dashed out the door, praying he could figure out where this boutique was located. As he climbed into Vanessa's sleek silver sedan, another realization hit him. How the hell am I supposed to run a clothing store? He groaned, banging his head against the steering wheel. This was going to be a long day. The drive downtown was a blur of wrong turns and near misses as Sean struggled to adapt to Vanessa's smaller frame and unfamiliar car. By the time he pulled into a parking spot behind a chic storefront, his nerves were frayed.
"There you are!"
A petite blonde waved from the back door. "I was about to call the police. You're never late." Sean plastered on what he hoped was a convincing smile. "Sorry, rough night. Overslept." The blonde, Kate, he assumed, raised an eyebrow. "You? Rough night? Since when do you do anything but work and yoga?"
Just trying new things.
He stammered, following her into the store. The boutique was a maze of racks filled with designer clothes and accessories. Sean felt overwhelmed just looking at it all. Well, snap out of it, Kate said, tossing him an apron. We've got that trunk show this afternoon, remember? The spring collection isn't going to sell itself. Sean nodded dumbly, fumbling with the apron strings. Right, of course. The trunk show. Kate frowned, studying him closely. Are you feeling okay? You seem off. Fine, he said quickly. Just, still waking up. Coffee would help. Since when do you drink coffee? Kate's frown deepened. You're always going on about your green tea cleanse or whatever. Sean mentally kicked himself. Right, tea! That's what I meant! Before Kate could question him further, the bell above the door chimed. A well-dressed older woman swept in, her arms laden with shopping bags. Vanessa, darling! She trilled. I simply must have your opinion on this dress for the charity gala next week. Sean froze, panic rising in his throat. He knew nothing about fashion, let alone what some society lady should wear to a gala. Kate swooped in, saving him. Mrs. Holbrook, how lovely to see you. Why don't you show me what you found while Vanessa finishes setting up for the trunk show? As Kate led the customer away, throwing a concerned glance over her shoulder, Sean breathed a sigh of relief. He busied himself straightening already impeccable displays, trying to look like he knew what he was doing. The morning crawled by in a haze of confusion and near disasters. Sean fumbled through conversations about hemlines and fabric choices, relying heavily on vague compliments and non-committal hmms. By lunchtime, he was certain Kate suspected something was seriously wrong with her boss. Okay, spill. Kate cornered him in the back room as he attempted to escape for a breather. What's going on with you today? You haven't made a single snarky comment about anyone's outfit choices. You keep hiding from the customers, and you just told Mrs. Holbrook that chartreuse would look great with her complexion. You hate chartreuse! Sean's mind raced, searching for a plausible explanation. I'm just not feeling like myself today, he said, wincing at the irony of his words. Kate's expression softened. Is this about Richard? I know the breakup was rough, but— No! Sean interrupted, latching on to this new piece of information. I mean, yes, sort of. I just needed to blow off some steam last night. Ended up drinking more than I should have. Kate's eyes widened. You? Drunk? Now I know something's wrong. Come on, let's grab lunch. You can tell me all about it. Sean followed her out of the store, grateful for the break, but dreading the conversation ahead. As they settled into a corner booth at a nearby cafe, he racked his brain for details about Vanessa's life. So, Kate said, stirring her iced tea. Start at the beginning. Where did you go last night? The Rusty Nail, Sean said, naming the dive bar where he'd encountered Vanessa. Kate nearly choked on her drink. That dump? Vanessa, you wouldn't be caught dead in a place like that. What were you thinking? Sean shrugged, picking at his salad. Like I said, needed a change of scenery. Anyway, I met this guy there. He spun a vague tale of drinking and dancing, careful to avoid any details that might contradict what Kate knew about Vanessa. To his relief, Kate seemed to buy it, her initial skepticism fading to concern. Oh, honey, she said, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. I know you're hurting, but this isn't the answer. Promise me you won't do anything like that again? Sean nodded, uncomfortable with the intimate gesture but knowing he had to play along. Promise. It was a one-time thing. As they walked back to the boutique, Sean's mind raced. He had to find a way to contact the real Vanessa and figure out how to reverse this insane body swap. But first, he had to survive the afternoon's trunk show. The next few hours were a whirlwind of fake smiles, nodded agreements, and vague fashion advice. Sean relied heavily on the other salesgirls, deferring to their opinions whenever possible. By some miracle, he managed to avoid any major catastrophes, though he was certain he'd inadvertently insulted at least 3 customers with his clumsy attempts at small talk. As the last customer left, Sean sagged against the counter in relief. "Thank God that's over," he muttered. "Over?" Kate looked at him incredulously. "We still have inventory to do, plus you promised to help me with the window display, remember?" Sean groaned inwardly. Would this day never end? 2 hours later, he finally escaped the boutique, his head spinning with terms like spring pastels and layered accessories. He'd never been so glad to see the inside of an apartment in his life. Collapsing onto Vanessa's plush couch, Sean pulled out her phone. He had to find a way to contact himself, or rather, Vanessa in his body. But how? He didn't even know his own phone number by heart. Scrolling through Vanessa's contacts, a name caught his eye. Sean. Rusty nail guy. His heart leaped. She'd saved his number. With trembling fingers, he typed out a message. "We need to talk. Meet me at the Rusty Nail in an hour." The response came almost immediately. "Who is this?" Sean hesitated, then replied, "It's Sean, in your body. Please tell me you remember what happened last night." There was a long pause before the next message appeared. "Oh God, I thought it was just a dream. How is this possible?" "I have no idea," Sean typed back. "But we need to figure out how to undo it. See you in an hour." He arrived at the bar early, nervously fidgeting with Vanessa's purse. When he saw his own body walk through the door, the surreal nature of the situation hit him full force. "This is so weird," Vanessa said in his voice, sliding into the booth across from him. Sean nodded, still unnerved by the sound of Vanessa's higher-pitched tones coming from his mouth. "Tell me about it. I just spent all day pretending to run a boutique. How was your day?" Vanessa grimaced. "Let's just say your boss at the construction site was not impressed with my sudden inability to operate heavy machinery." "Shit," Sean muttered. "I'm probably fired." "Probably," Vanessa agreed. "Though, to be fair, you nearly drove my car into a lamppost this morning, so I'd say we're even." Sean ran a hand through her long hair in frustration. "This is insane. How did this even happen?" Vanessa sighed, absently scratching at the stubble on his chin. "I'm still piecing it together, but from what I remember, we were both pretty drunk. You were going on about how easy women have it, how you could do my job in your sleep." Sean winced. That did sound like something he'd say after a few too many whiskeys. "I told you that you had no idea what it was like to be a woman," Vanessa continued. "That you wouldn't last a day in my shoes. And then, I don't know. There was this weird old woman at the end of the bar. She said something about teaching us both a lesson, waved her hands around, and then everything went black." "A weird old woman?" Sean repeated skeptically. "What, like a witch or something?" Vanessa shrugged. "I know it sounds crazy, but do you have a better explanation for this?" She gestured between them. Sean had to admit he didn't. Okay, so assuming this is some kind of magic spell or whatever, how do we break it? Is there a time limit? Do we need to learn some big life lesson? I have no idea, Vanessa said, frustration evident in his voice. But we need to figure it out fast. I can't keep pretending to be you, and I'm guessing you're not exactly thriving in my world either. Sean nodded grimly. Agreed. So, what's the plan? They spent the next hour brainstorming, but came up empty. The mysterious old woman was nowhere to be found, and neither of them had any experience with breaking magical curses. Maybe we just need to live each other's lives for a while, Vanessa suggested reluctantly. See if that triggers the swap back? Sean groaned.
You mean I have to keep working at the boutique? I nearly had a nervous breakdown today trying to tell the difference between ecru and eggshell.
Vanessa rolled her eyes. Please, try spending a day on a construction site in your body. I've never been so sore in my life.
Fine,
Sean conceded.
We'll give it a week, but if nothing changes by then, we're finding that old woman if we have to search every bar in the city.
They exchanged notes on their respective lives, important names to remember, daily routines, quirks and habits to mimic. As they parted ways, Sean couldn't shake the feeling that this experience was going to change him in ways he couldn't yet imagine. The next few days were a crash course in living someone else's life. Sean struggled to master the intricacies of makeup application and the subtle art of walking in heels. He found himself constantly surprised by the way people treated him as Vanessa, the catcalls on the street, the dismissive attitudes from some male customers, the expectations to always be polite and smiling. Vanessa, meanwhile, was getting a taste of male privilege and the pressures that came with it. She marveled at how easily people deferred to her opinion, but chafed at the constant expectation to be tough and unemotional. By the fourth day, they were both exhausted and no closer to switching back. They met again at the Rusty Nail, comparing notes and commiserating over drinks.
I never realized how much effort goes into being a woman,
Sean admitted, nursing a vodka soda. The clothes, the makeup, the constant vigilance. It's exhausting. Vanessa nodded, taking a swig of Sean's usual whiskey.
And I had no idea how much pressure men are under to always be strong and in control. It's like any show of vulnerability is seen as weakness.
They fell into a companionable silence, each lost in thought. Finally, Sean spoke up.
You know, I think I owe you an apology. I've said some pretty stupid things about women having it easy. I had no idea.
Vanessa smiled ruefully. And I probably haven't given men enough credit either. We've both been guilty of making assumptions. As they continued to talk, sharing experiences and insights from their week in each other's shoes, something shifted in the air between them. A warmth spread through Sean's chest, Vanessa's chest, that had nothing to do with the alcohol.
You know,
he said softly,
despite how crazy this all is, I'm kind of glad it happened. I feel like I understand you, and myself, better now.
Vanessa nodded, reaching across the table to take his hand. Me too. It's been eye-opening, to say the least. As their fingers intertwined, a strange tingling sensation swept over them both. The bar seemed to spin, colors blurring and swirling around them. Sean closed his eyes against the dizzying sensation. When he opened them again, he was looking at Vanessa from across the table. The real Vanessa, back in her own body. He glanced down, seeing his own familiar hands and broad chest. We're back, Vanessa exclaimed, her green eyes wide with surprise and joy. Sean laughed in relief, flexing his fingers and reveling in the feeling of being back in his own skin. I can't believe it. How? The lesson, Vanessa said, realization dawning on her face. We learned to see things from each other's perspective. That must have been what the old woman meant. Sean shook his head in amazement. Who would have thought a drunken dare would lead to all this? Vanessa smiled, a mischievous glint in her eye. Well, now that we're back to normal, what do you say we celebrate? I hear there's a great boutique downtown that could use your expert fashion advice. Sean groaned good-naturedly. Only if you'll join me for a day at the construction site afterward. I hear they're short a crane operator. As they left the bar together, laughing and teasing, Sean realized that while he was glad to be back in his own body, he wouldn't trade the experience for anything. He'd gained a new perspective, a new friend, and maybe, just maybe, the beginnings of something more. The warm summer night enveloped them as they strolled down the sidewalk, their steps in sync. Sean found himself hyper-aware of Vanessa's presence beside him, the gentle sway of her hips, the way her chestnut hair caught the glow of the streetlights. He'd spent days inhabiting her body, but somehow, seeing her as herself again was even more captivating. So, Vanessa said, breaking the comfortable silence, what was the weirdest part of being me? Sean chuckled, running a hand through his short hair, a gesture that felt wonderfully familiar after days of long tresses. God, where do I even start? The bras were a nightmare. How do you deal with those things all day? Vanessa laughed, the sound light and musical. Years of practice, my friend. What about high heels? I saw you nearly faceplant at least twice. Don't remind me, Sean groaned. I have a whole new respect for anyone who can walk in those torture devices. But you know what? The hardest part wasn't the physical stuff. It was the constant awareness. Vanessa tilted her head, curious. What do you mean? Sean sighed, struggling to put the feeling into words. It's like I was always on guard, always aware of how I looked, how I was perceived, making sure I didn't say the wrong thing or give the wrong impression. It was exhausting. Vanessa nodded slowly. Welcome to being a woman. It's something we learn to deal with from a young age, but I can see how it would be overwhelming if you're not used to it. They walked in silence for a moment, each lost in thought. Then Vanessa spoke up again. What about you? What was the strangest part of being Sean? Sean watched as Vanessa's brow furrowed, considering the question. It was strange to see his own expressions on her face, yet somehow endearing. The physical strength was a trip, she admitted. I've never felt so powerful, but at the same time, there was this constant pressure to be tough, to never show weakness. And the way other men treated me, us, was eye-opening. It's like there's this unspoken code of masculinity that I never realized existed. Sean nodded, a rueful smile playing on his lips. Yeah, that sounds about right. It's not always easy being a guy, either. They reached a small park, its winding paths lit by soft lamplight. Without discussion, they veered off the sidewalk, following a tree-lined trail. You know, Vanessa said softly, I think this whole experience has made me realize how much we all have in common, despite our differences. We're all just trying to navigate this crazy world, deal with expectations and pressures. And figure out who we really are, Sean finished. Their eyes met, a current of understanding passing between them. They found a bench overlooking a small pond, its surface reflecting the twinkling stars above. As they sat, Sean was acutely aware of the small space between them, charged with a new kind of energy. "Can I ask you something?" Vanessa said, turning to face him. "That first day, when you were in my body, how did it feel?" Sean considered the question carefully. "Honestly, terrifying at first. Everything felt wrong, like I was wearing a costume that didn't quite fit. But as the days went on, I started to see the world through your eyes, to understand things I never had before." Vanessa nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "I felt the same way. It was like stepping into a whole new world. Scary, but also kind of exhilarating."
"Exactly," Sean agreed. "And you know what's weird? As glad as I am to be back in my own body, I kind of miss parts of being you."
Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really? Which parts?" Sean felt a blush creep up his neck.
"Well, don't take this the wrong way, but you're beautiful, Vanessa, inside and out. Being you, even for a short time, made me see that in a way I never could have otherwise."
The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Vanessa's eyes widened slightly, a mix of surprise and something else, something warmer in their depths.
"Sean," she said softly, "are you saying what I think you're saying?"
He took a deep breath, gathering his courage.
"I'm saying that this crazy experience has made me see you, the real you, in a whole new light. And I like what I see. A lot."
Vanessa's smile widened, a sparkle in her eye. "You know, it's funny. I was just thinking the same thing about you." The space between them seemed to shrink, an invisible force drawing them closer. Sean's heart raced as he leaned in, his hand coming up to cup Vanessa's cheek. Their lips met in a soft, tentative kiss that quickly deepened, years of misunderstanding and assumptions melting away in the warmth of newfound connection. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Sean couldn't help but laugh.
"You know, when I walked into that bar last week, I never imagined this is where I'd end up."
Vanessa grinned, her fingers intertwined with his. "Life has a funny way of surprising us, doesn't it? Who would have thought it would take literally walking in each other's shoes to bring us together?" As they sat there under the stars, talking and laughing and sharing gentle kisses, Sean marveled at the strange twists of fate that had led them to this moment. He silently thanked that mysterious old woman, wherever she was, for the magical mishap that had opened his eyes to a whole new world of understanding, and to the amazing woman sitting beside him. The night stretched on, full of possibilities and new beginnings. And as Sean walked Vanessa home, their hands clasped tightly together, he knew that while their body-swapping adventure had come to an end, their real journey was just beginning.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!